It is 8 years on now since the Grenfell Tower fire, and there are still thousands of apartment blocks in England waiting to have dangerous cladding removed from them. Of 5,500 that have been identified as unsafe, less than 500 were fixed in the last year. Those figures are from the government. A lot of the work's been delayed because of the costs and who is liable for them. Some of the work hasn't even started. It's a disaster for anyone who has bought or is in the process of buying one of these flats. Rachel Loftus is still waiting to hear when work on her block of flats in Leeds will begin. Rachel, hi. Tell us about the block you live in. When did you discover it had dangerous cladding?
Yeah, so I live in a 6-storey block, so it's quite small. There's only 25 apartments, and immediately after the Grenfell Tower, like anyone who lived in a high-rise residential at that time, we checked, and we were given assurances that we did not have the same type of material.
Sorry, we're losing your line. It's dropping out. What I'll do is I'm going to leave Rachel for the moment. Let's try and get her back again. And I've fortunately got Giles Grover with me here in the studio. He's from End Our Cladding Scandal. It's a campaign and support group that helps leaseholders and residents right across the UK with problems like Rachel has got, cladding and other fire safety problems. He's here. Giles, in the 8 years then since Grenfell, why has the progress been so slow?
Good afternoon. There's lots of reasons for this. I think part of the issue is we've never really got to a settled position in terms of what makes a building safe. But like you say, a lot of this has been the delays and disputes, partly about what work needs to be done, partly about who's going to fund it. Even though the laws changed a few years ago, there's still too many delays, too many disputes. Essentially, you've got a position now where you've got some people in some buildings are protected from the cost of some defects. So it's all still working its way through developers, freeholders, housing associations, managing agents, everyone's saying, do the right thing, residents, leaseholders be protected. But everyone's trying to avoid paying for it. That's still the case 8.5 years on after the tragic events at Grenfell.
What does it mean for people if they own or are partly own one of these flats? What's it done for values and your chances of resale?
Yeah, it's you're getting hammered from all sides, really. It is the financial impact, which everyone, feels very keenly, whether it's the insurance cost. I used to pay £300 a year, I'm paying £1,300 a year now, and that's very typical. It's then the impact upon selling. It's your life choices, you're stuck. It's the opportunity cost, the government's focusing on growth and building 1.5 million homes, but you've got hundreds of thousands of people who are still trapped, who still can't sell, and the first rung of the property ladder is still in tatters, and this government has sadly not done enough to fix that yet.
We can go back now to Rachel, because we've managed to get her line back. So, sorry, Rachel, you were describing your block. It's you said it's only 6 stories high, and after Grenfell, you had it checked like everybody else did. So tell us what has happened since then.
Yeah, so in January 2020, just by virtue of a man being stood in our courtyard in a high-vis jacket, we found out that there were some defects with our building that had been checked, and we were put on what was called an awaking watch. And this is the idea that your building is so unsafe, somebody needs to stand guard 24 hours, 7 days a week. And then we found out very quickly after that we were expected to pay for that.
What did that cost you? I think we lost this line again. I think we're going to have to get her back on a phone line.
With Rachel last week, and she said the net effect has been about 60 grand over the 8 years, whether it's on insurance, waking watch. Waking watch has been a huge cost for her, definitely. But sorry.
Go on. In Rachel's case, I know they have had a battle, haven't they, over who is liable to pay this. At first, they were told that they must meet the cost of it themselves.
So that's happened at a lot of buildings where essentially leaseholders have been told they've got to pay 100 grand, 200 grand. As soon as the law changes, where it might be the freeholder, the developer, the contractor, that's where it's been compounded by having a different approach to risk. So when leaseholders were on the hook, we were being told 100 grand. Now industry, developers are on the hook, we're being told, these safety risks are fine, don't worry about it, they're tolerable. But it is the interim measures, the cost in the 8 years since, and your life choices. I know many people who can't even move, who have to rent out their flats. You can rent out fine, you can't sell it. So it's the madness of the government's approach to it. It's all been very siloed, very reactive, and not really understanding the cost to individuals and to the economy and the wider housing market just not functioning properly yet.
But the last government did set aside, didn't they, a fund to help? And they also did make it much clearer who was liable. And my understanding is that in Rachel's case, they had to go to, is it a tribunal? But eventually it was the freeholder who was found to be liable and not them?
So essentially the law says it should be the developer on the hook for the costs, then the freeholder, and then the very last resort is a leaseholder. In Rachel's case, my understanding is no developer, but a freeholder is a multi-billion pound company where there has been tribunal and legal actions against them. So that same freeholder has done now finally or been forced to do the right thing at other buildings, but it's still not doing that at Rachel's building. This is where we're dealing on buildings one by one by one by one, rather than the government just taking a strategic approach to fix them all, make the home safe, get people comfortable and confident in their lives, return the confidence to the housing market, and then get the money back from industry, the guilty parties.
So, Rachel, we were just telling a bit of your story because Giles said he saw you at a conference only recently. So we know that you ended up going to a tribunal to get the freeholder to accept that they would have to pay for the costs. Do you have any idea how long that's going to take?
No, so the tribunal put in place that it should be by November of this year finished. However, what we've seen is that our freeholder has gone to the building safety regulator, and what they've already seen is that their application's been rejected because they haven't put forward to do the right things. So after 6 years of waiting and legal clarification, they still don't seem to agree on what the right things are to do for my building. Meanwhile, me and all my fellow leaseholders were spending far more in insurance and in service charge than we've ever been, 10, 15, 20 times more than we were in 2019.
How have you afforded that?
I don't know. I ask myself this every day because it can, every time we thought it would just go on for a few more months, you just keep putting things on the never.
What did the waiting watch cost you all, the waking watch?
So it was £840 each per flat per month. So it was
like another mortgage.
£9,000. Yeah. I basically I'm paying more in service charge and insurance than I am paying for my mortgage every month.
Giles, one idea, and it sounds like a really good idea, is that governments would say what the safety requirements should be, because there were lots of people there was nothing wrong with their flats, but lenders wouldn't lend on them and so on. And the idea was the government would say, we regard this level of safety as safe and we will underwrite this level of risk. Now, there are currently fire safety guidelines and they say that some flammable materials can be used on a building so long as tests show the fire wouldn't spread beyond one floor within 15 minutes or beyond 2 floors within half an hour. Now, this government would like to turn those safety guidelines into law. Is that an acceptable solution to you?
The current version of safety guidelines, not at all, because this is the point that we've been through so many shifting views of what risk is. The key question, I've joined that many roundtables with lenders, insurers, leaseholders, everyone just wants to know what makes a building safe. So if it's the government's failure to regulate, the lack of oversight, the weak regulatory standards that have allowed us to be dragged into this mess for 30 or 40 years, it's incumbent upon them to make sure there's consistent risk assessment standards that protect life and property and are accepted by industry, because they've been happy to create this mess, so they need to do a lot more to fix it. But the current interpretation of the regulations just mean too many people won't be safe in their homes, won't feel safe, and will have to carry on paying thousands of pounds insurance, won't be able to sell their flats because their service charge is so high. So the government's got to do a lot more. That's what they promised in opposition. We've not really seen enough of that since they've come to power in the last year and a half.
Do you know what's happening in Scotland? Because there was a statement from the Scottish government that they would do this thing, that they would set a safety standard and there wouldn't be all this toing and froing about who was liable. Did that ever happen?
The Scottish had a different approach. They've got slightly different ownership structures there, but they were conducting what's known as a single building assessment, which is what we need, because for the last 8 years, we've focused on cladding, knowing full well that at Grenfell it was the fire doors, it was the automatic opening vents, it was a stay-put policy in place. So Scotland at least has said, OK, we need to understand what makes a building holistically safe, because that's how they're built. I think there have probably been a lot of delays there, partly because of funding, partly because we've got major issues with capacity constraints as well. But in Ireland as well, they're looking at making the buildings fully safe. So,
but they're still looking at it. So people who bought them are still in the same situation that you were in.
Yeah, and that's where the government needs to take a lot more control, because the law has changed under the last government, but it's still kind of this laissez-faire. Local regulators do something, building owners do something, whereas government now just needs to say, make these homes safe, give people that confidence and certainty, and that's what we need the government to stand behind, the regulations, and basically a national remediation standard. That's what we've been calling out for from day one, and the government still needs to do a lot more to actually cement that into
place. But a
place.
higher standard than the current safety guidelines.
Absolutely, yeah. The current standard just leave us all, trapped in this mess for Kingdom Come.
But Rachel, you have been helped, haven't you, by regulations set down about how this should happen? I mean, it might have taken a long time, but you haven't been left to get on with it, have you?
Well, it depends what you mean, because I think when in 2020, when it looked like I was supposed to pay the bill, my freeholders were very motivated to get the work done. Since it's become clear that they are responsible for paying for that work, nothing has happened. So there's not one bit of cladding that's been removed from my building. There is not one bit of insulation that's been checked, and that we know that they're going to miss the date that they've been set in law to do that. All the time, I am paying more and more and more than the value of my flat, probably by the end of it. So whilst it might be helpful that the law is clear that they are responsible, the fact that they can get away with doing nothing and leaving me living in a home that's unsafe, costing me 3 times as much as it should, I don't think is really as helpful, and I don't feel helped by that at all.
No, I can understand. Rachel, we'll have to leave it there because we're almost out of time. That was Rachel Loftus and Giles Grover. The government told us that fixing dangerous cladding is a priority for them, and they are working quickly to remediate unsafe buildings, with over £1 million provided to fix social housing. And they say that new legal duties coming in the remediation bill will push this work forward even faster, holding landlords to account for fixing unsafe cladding and forcing them to meet hard deadlines or face criminal prosecution. But that obviously is landlords and not homeowners.